So the Las Vegas Raiders have officially lost to the Denver Broncos, and today we're going to talk about some of what we saw in this game. We're going to talk about some of what I wanted to see coming in, and some of what the defense showed, the offense showed, some of the different players. Plus, we have an update on the actual draft stock of the Raiders, right? The actual draft pick that the Raiders will have. We actually jumped up one spot. Plus, there's an update on the quarterbacks, which we'll talk about a little bit later on in this video. Let's just talk about this Raiders versus Broncos game because I think it was a very, very interesting game. So the Raiders were fairly close to the Broncos for the most part, right? It's not like the Broncos absolutely pulled away. In fact, for the first half, the Raiders were actually up. We looked like the better team in the first half. The Raiders were up 13-9. The Raiders did unfortunately throw an interception that allowed the Denver Broncos to take the lead. The interception came on a play in which Gardner Minshew got hit as he threw the football. DJ Glaze ended up getting hit. Gardner Minshew was throwing the football as he got hit. The pass was a little high, and it ended up getting intercepted. But, outside of that one play, the Raiders played a fairly clean game. And I think Desmond Ridder also technically had a fumble towards the end of the game. But outside of that, I feel like the Raiders on the offensive side looked a lot better, right? It was a close game for the most part. A couple plays here or there, and it kind of ended the Raiders game. But for the most part, the Raiders played a lot better. And that was one of the things I really wanted to see from the Raiders coming into this game. Antonio Pierce is expected to be here next year, right? I know some people are going to say, you got to get another coach. You got to fire AP. You got to move forward. But the truth is the Raiders plan to stick with Antonio Pierce. There's like a 75% chance Antonio Pierce is going to be the quarterback or the head coach next year, which means the Raiders got to figure out who the offensive coordinator is. And based off of what I saw from Scott Turner these first two games, he looked good out there. And when the Raiders draft a quarterback in the NFL draft, right, when they get that quarterback, they're going to need someone to develop that quarterback. And yes, you can probably go out there and find a different offensive coordinator, right? If the Saints get a whole new coaching staff, maybe you bring in Clay Kubiak. Maybe there's some other coaches out there that end up getting fired, right? Coaches, coaching system or whatever. And then you bring in one of those guys as your offensive coordinator. Or maybe you stick with Scott Turner, right? And I think Scott Turner has done a pretty good job over these first 2 weeks. Now, I know statistically the Raiders haven't put up monster numbers in terms of the points, and I think points is what really matters. But I think some of the points and not being able to convert also comes down to the quarterback play. I'd make the argument, last week we drove downfield pretty much on every single drive. Today against the Broncos, we drove down pretty much on most drives. The unfortunate thing is we ended up kicking 4 field goals today, right? So you only scored 1 touchdown and you kicked 4 field goals. Imagine instead of kicking 4 field goals, you only kicked 2, and the other 2 field goals were touchdowns, right? You're essentially adding 8 more points to that 19 points. And I know it doesn't work exactly like that, but usually when you go from an average quarterback like Gardner Minshew and you upgrade that, and you end up getting a quarterback, maybe it's Shedeur Sanders, maybe it's Cam Ward. Generally speaking, a quarterback that's better is going to be able to convert, maybe it's 3rd and 8, and that quarterback converts it. Right, today we saw Bo Nix do a really, really good job for the Denver Broncos. I'm not the type of person that's going to hate just to hate because it's a divisional opponent. I admit Patrick Mahomes, the best quarterback in the NFL right now. There's a chance in 10 years, Patrick Mahomes is going to be the greatest quarterback of all time. There's a real chance if he just continues the pace he's on right now. I admit Justin Herbert's a great quarterback, and I will also admit that watching Bo Nix today, he looks really, really, really good. Bo Nix, to me, has so much upside, and part of what I'm seeing is, there's 3rd and 10 plays, and this guy's standing in the pocket, he's creating, and he's getting the ball out, he's pushing it downfield. And the thing with Bo Nix is, not only is he a rookie, so, think about this from the Denver Broncos perspective. Last year, the Denver Broncos sucked. We had beat them, I think, for 3 or 4 straight years. I think we're like 6-0 against them coming into this year. The only thing that changed with the Broncos is they got a rookie quarterback, and that rookie quarterback's converting, right? And they're putting up 29 points against us today because that rookie quarterback's doing a good job converting. And I say all that because that's the difference with the Raiders right now. The reason why the Raiders are not converting is because Gardner Minshew, Desmond Ridder, whoever our quarterback is, just not able to get it done, essentially, right? And I think that's kind of what the Raiders chose when they ultimately did not get a quarterback. Right, when you made that decision not to get a quarterback, you ultimately chose that, hey, because we went down this path to Gardner Minshew, this is what you're going to get, right, with a guy like Gardner Minshew. Now, Minshew did end up getting hurt today. So people are saying it's a collarbone. Maybe he broke his collarbone or something to that tune. We're not 100% sure what it is. We'll probably get an update over the next day or two. I hope he's okay. One of the good things with where we're at right now is if Gardner Minshew does miss time at this point, Aiden O'Connell should be back within the next 2 weeks, right? So hopefully AOC can come in and kind of show us a little bit of what he has as the season kind of comes to an end, because the Raiders are going to have to really figure out how they're going to handle the quarterback position going into next season. Obviously, I think the Raiders got to draft the quarterback, but we also have to recognize the quarterbacks in this class aren't very good, right? At least that's kind of what we're hearing. Some of these guys will also end up returning back to school, which again we'll talk about a little bit later on. But I wanted to see this Raiders offense, just what can it actually do against the Denver Broncos, and that's a really really good defense that the Broncos have as well. The quick game was better. The run game was a lot better. Sincere McCormick had 5 carries for 33 yards. On the ground, we averaged 4.3 yards per attempt. Honestly, it was higher than that if you don't consider the quarterbacks, because the quarterbacks had 3 carries for 8 yards. So kind of lowers that average. But 4.3 yards per attempt is pretty good running the football. Through the air, we had 328 combined yards. Jacoby Myers, 121 yards. Phenomenal game by him. Trey Tucker had a really, really nice catch towards the end of the game. I think he went for like 28 yards. Although he didn't get out of bounds, he still went for like 28 yards. Tucker had 7 catches for 82 yards. And it's nice that those two guys are getting involved. Last week we targeted Brock Bowers 15 times. And in today's game, we only targeted him a handful of times. I think he had like eight targets or so. And some of those targets were like throwaways as well. And he just happened to be closest. But Brock Bowers only had 4 catches. And the Broncos came in with the philosophy that they're going to take this guy away. And they did, right? He only had 4 catches for 38 yards. But that allowed Jacoby and Trey to kind of do their thing. And those guys stepped up, right? Over 200 combined yards, 17 catches between those two guys. Devon Diablo had a catch for 34 yards. We had a fake punt, right, which is a really, really, really good thing by the head coach to call it and by the special teams coach to be able to design it, right? It was a pretty nice play in which the punter got the ball and they fake like they're going to go to the left for Diablo to slip pass towards the right. And they end up hitting him. He takes it 34 yards. The Raiders defense was not good today. And I don't blame, Patrick Graham. I don't blame anyone on that defensive side. We're banged up at this point, right? Christian Wilkins is out. Malcolm Koonce is out. Marcus Epps is out. Two of our 3 starting corners are out. Jack Jones got absolutely destroyed out there, but he was hurt coming into this game as well. He was questionable coming in, so people are like, this guy's probably not going to play. He ended up playing and kind of fighting through it. He had some nice plays against the run, but he got beat a couple of times, right? He had a touchdown that he gave up, and it just didn't look great on the defensive side. In fact, you can make the argument, although the defense did a good job for most of the game, at the end of the game, the defense did have some struggles, right? We went down 2 possessions, and then the Raiders offense actually went downfield and had to score. And then the defense did get a stop, which is a great thing. But the defense is banged up, right? The Raiders gotta get healthy going into next year, and I think that'll be a big part of it as well for the Raiders. Maxx Crosby had a couple of really, really nice plays. People have been talking, kind of negatively about Maxx. He had a couple of nice plays. Tyree Wilson had a sack today on a defensive line game. We had a couple other guys that generated pressure. The defense isn't absolutely terrible, right? But I do think that one of the big issues that I have with the defense right now is we're not forcing turnovers. Coming into this season, that was going to be the one thing the Raiders had to do. In fact, if you guys go all the way back to training camp, we talked about this so much that for the Raiders to have success this year, from an offensive side of the football, it's going to be kind of slow, right? It's not like we're going to be putting up 40 points a game on the offensive side. Our mindset was, hey, we're going to come into this game, we're going to get our playmakers the football and let those guys make plays. But it's going to be a defensive effort, right? The defense is going to have to lead this team. The defense is going to have to force turnovers, get sacks, and just be a great defense, right? And we haven't really gotten that. Points-wise, the defense hasn't been terrible. But turnover-wise, the defense hasn't helped the offense at all. And the offense obviously hasn't helped the defense either, right? The offense is way too many turnovers. But I think a part of that also comes down to the fact that, the defense isn't really carrying this team. So the offense is trying to make up for that. And it's just, we have Gardner Minshew. What are we really going to do at this point? And then, of course, we saw Desmond Ridder come in a little bit. Now, I already knew this with Desmond Ridder. We saw him, I think, like 2 or 3 weeks back. I think it was right before the bye that we saw Desmond Ridder. Desmond Ridder's not a good quarterback, right? Like, multiple sacks. He had multiple fumbles in that game. It was just bad. And then he came in for the Raiders today when Minshew ultimately went down. one possession game, came in, and then he had the essentially had a strip sack, right? And then you can put that on Colton Miller a little bit. Same as the Gardner Minshew interception, right? When Minshew went to throw the ball, DJ Glaze ended up getting hit. I think the pass was for Jacoby Myers. DJ Glaze guy ended up hitting Gardner Minshew as he was stepping up to throw it. You can kind of put that on the right tackle. Same with Desmond Ridder. You can kind of put that on the left tackle. But I think both of those quarterbacks, the pocket awareness is not great, right? In fact, I think with all three of our quarterbacks that we have, pocket awareness is not one of the strong suits. But it is what it is, right? That's kind of where the Raiders are at this point. It's really not a big deal. We know that this season is over, right? We're 2 for 9. The only thing the Raiders can do at this point is just continue to get better and show improvement. Some individual players, I think, is another big part of this. Jacoby Myers is a great wide receiver, but he's not a great playmaker, right? Like, he'll run good routes, he'll get open, you'll get him the ball, but he's not the type of guy that's going to, run a post route and run away from the defense, right? He doesn't have that type of speed. But Jacoby Myers has shown us plenty of times that he's a legit wide receiver where if you paired a true number one guy with a guy like Jacoby Myers, they can change the game essentially, right? And those are the things I kind of wanted to see. Even Jackson Powers-Johnson looked really, really good today. He had a couple of plays where he was straight up just moving people. And then finally, let's just end this video talking a little bit about some of what the updated draft positions ultimately are. So the Tennessee Titans actually beat the Houston Texans today. And that's fun. That's exactly what we wanted to see, right? We wanted to see that team ultimately win. We want to see Jacksonville. We want to see the Giants. We want to see these teams win. And with the Tennessee Titans winning, they ended up dropping from pick 3 down to pick 6. And the Raiders have now jumped up. So the Raiders now have the 3rd overall pick at this point. So the Raiders are on a really, really, really good spot. And of course, if you're tied 2 and 9, right, there's going to be a couple of tiebreakers and it'll hit the strength of schedule essentially as well. And right now, the Raiders are going to rank 3rd because of the strength of schedule, right? Unfortunately, because of our division, every single one of those teams are going to make playoffs. So our strength of schedule is going to be a lot higher at this point, right, than a team like the Giants and a team like the Jaguars. But regardless of that, if the Raiders, finish the season with the pick that they have right now, that puts you in contention to get one of the top 2 quarterbacks. And, even if a team like the Jaguars have the 1st overall pick, the Jags are not going to take a quarterback. They've locked into Trevor Lawrence. The Jags are much better off just sticking with Trevor Lawrence, especially since they paid him, and taking a difference maker. Maybe that's Travis Hunter. Maybe that's Will Johnson. The Jags are better off taking a guy at that pick. Now, I wouldn't be surprised if the Jags decided, hey, you know what? The New York Jets have a top 10 pick. Let's swap picks with the New York Jets. And maybe the Jets are going to say, hey, we'll give you 2 first-round picks. We'll even throw in Devontae Adams on top of that. Or we'll make him part of the package, or whatever it is. And they might even jump up to the 1st overall pick. And if that happens, that would be bad for the Raiders, right? Because the New York Giants have already cut Daniel Jones, so the New York Giants are going to take a quarterback. Most people think Cam Ward, at least most scouts, I don't think fans actually agree with this yet. Most scouts think Cam Ward's the number 1 quarterback in this class. So, whichever team takes that 1st quarterback, let's say it is the Giants, they're going to most likely take Cam Ward, which would leave Shedeur Sanders available for the Raiders. I would take either of the 2 quarterbacks, truth be told. But the Raiders got to come away with this next draft with the quarterback. Now, the one unfortunate thing with this is, if you really want a quarterback in this class, there's probably only 2 quarterbacks that are 1st-round quarterbacks at this point. Jalen Monroe looked really, really, really bad yesterday. Alabama ended up losing yesterday, and he looked really, really bad. And some people are saying that he should actually return to school at this point, right? It doesn't make sense for him to come out this year. Garrett Nussmeier has kind of fallen off a little bit. Although, if he does come out this year, he'll still be considered a 1st-round prospect, just because he's a pro-ready prospect, similar to J.J. McCarthy. Then there's a couple other quarterbacks. Drew Aller's another guy that's potentially coming out. Keep in mind, all 3 of those quarterbacks could theoretically return back to school, right? They all have 1 year of eligibility left. Shedeur Sanders, Cam Ward don't have any more eligibility. Those guys have to come out at this point, right? So don't quote me on Shedeur Sanders. Maybe he can potentially go back, but I don't think he can. Cam Ward definitely can. He's already spent 5 years in college. The quarterback class does not look as good, right? People are saying this class is not looking good. 1 or 2 first-round picks as quarterbacks. The other guys, you might be reaching for. Some people even think Shedeur Sanders is going to be a reach at this point with the top 5 pick. I don't know if I 100% agree with that. I think he's a good quarterback, but some people do think he could be a reach as well with the top 5 pick. This class is not looking good, and never overlook the fact that there's a chance if the Raiders have like the 3rd or 4th overall pick that even with Sanders or Cam Ward on the board, there's a chance the Raiders don't even take a quarterback. There's a chance the Raiders say, hey, you know what? The Pittsburgh Steelers took the philosophy of Russell Wilson and Justin Fields, and they're at 8-2 or whatever they're at this point. Let's take that same approach. Let's get healthy and let's add Will Johnson. Let's add Ashton Genty. Let's add Travis Hunter, right? Let's add one of these guys and just go forward again with, some mixture of Gardner Minshew, or maybe you go out and get Justin Fields. Maybe it's Sam Darnold, right? Maybe you bring him in for 2 years or whatever it is. It's not guaranteed that we're going to take a quarterback in this class, right? Obviously, if it's up to me, I obviously would, but I think we're going to find out a lot about some of these quarterbacks, within the next 2 to 3 months, right? I think a lot of the workouts and those type of things, we're going to find out a lot about some of these quarterbacks. But let me know what you guys think, man. What did you guys think about this game? What do you guys think about some of these quarterbacks? How do you guys feel about the Las Vegas Raiders season up to this point? It's unfortunate because we still have like 6-7 games left. Yes, 2 months of football, and the Raiders season is over, right? So it does suck, in my opinion, that the Raiders are at this point, but it is what it is. We'll see what ends up happening. Let me know what you guys think. Thumbs up, subscribe, and I will see you guys next time with another video.